You alone, cornerstone, the solid rock on which we stand. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be. I will build my life. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
You are all I ever wanted, all I ever thought I'd need. Broke it off before we started, didn't know what to believe. Maybe I love you, maybe I hate you. There is something in your eyes that leaves me paralyzed, terrified that you'll love me better than anyone else. Are you here to save my life, or the devil in disguise? Terrified that you'll love me better than anyone else before. Terrified that you'll love me better. Terrified that you'll love me better. Tried to keep you on the outside, but now you're underneath my skin, and I can feel your eyes are on me. All the lights are going dim. Maybe I love you, maybe I hate you. There is something in your eyes that leaves me paralyzed, terrified that you'll love me better than anyone else. Are you here to save my life, or the devil in disguise? Terrified that you'll love me better than anyone else before. Terrified that you'll love me better. Terrified that you'll love me better. There is something in your eyes that leaves me paralyzed, terrified that you'll love me better than anyone else. Are you here to save my life, or the devil in disguise? Terrified that you'll love me, love me, love me, love me better. There is something in your eyes that leaves me paralyzed, terrified.
everybody? Awake. That's a mood. I like that. Is everybody in here? I still see some people over there. They'll make their way in. All right, guys. Please stand with me, and we'll sing a song. Greatest day in history. Death is beaten, you have rescued me. Sing it out, Jesus is alive. The empty cross, an empty grave. Life eternal, you have won the day. Shout it out, Jesus is alive. He's alive. And oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Ever I am changed. When I stand in that place, free at last, meeting face to face, I am yours, Jesus, you are mine. And this joy, perfect peace, earthly pain, finally will cease. Celebrate, Jesus is alive. He's alive. And oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. And oh, what a glorious day, what a glorious way that you have saved me. And oh, what a glorious day, what a glorious name, Jesus. And oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Forever I am changed. Go, Jane.
Hello. Hey, good morning, you guys. Daniel, that's such a great song. I love that one. And
like
I
that
didn't
song.
see anybody doing their like, oh.
Yeah, whoa. Or
So
even the-
I expect hand motions next time.
Yeah,
or claps.
next time you can come up and do emotions if you
Okay.
want. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, y'all can take a seat. Make yourself at home. Make yourself comfortable. My name's Jane. Welcome. Sunday morning. So we got a few announcements for you. Super exciting. We are launching Sports World signups next week, you guys. Like, what? Summer is just around the corner. And Sports World Red and Blue War is about to happen. Daniel, what team are you usually on for Sports World?
What?
What's your
Let me tell
team?
you, this is my first Sports World.
This is Daniel's first Sports World. What?
Yeah.
I'm a red girl myself. I love the red team. The blue team's great too. Purple team, staff. So we've got Sports World launching next Sunday. So think about what sports you want to do. Yaya, soccer, tennis, volleyball, basketball. We don't have a track. Sorry, guys. Next, we got Eden, which is April 11th. So 8th through 12th, y'all sign up. We're going to do a worship night. Going to be super chill, super fun. Going to get some chicken nuggies. So
Nuggies.
Yeah, chicken nuggies from Chick-fil-A. So just come, be prepared to just sing with a bunch of girls in a room. It's gonna be so fun, so chill. Next we have, I forgot what we have next. We have so much stuff going on. We do have IO. Mackenzie's gonna talk more about that in middle school. We also have Senior Sunday launching. That's why I forgot about it, because this is our first Sunday to launch Senior Sunday. So if you're a senior, sign up. It's totally free for you guys. We're gonna cater in some breadsticks and some pasta from Olive Garden. Olive Garden has my heart. We love our pasta here. We're gonna do a fun slideshow with some really embarrassing baby pictures. So we're gonna send you some information about that soon. And yeah, Senior Sunday, it's gonna be great. Bring your family. Don't bring your friends, just your family. All right, Daniel, take it away. Thank you.
All right, guys, please stand with me in worship. Lord of all creation, of water, earth, and sky, the heavens are your tabernacle. Glory to the Lord on high. God of wonders beyond our galaxy, you are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty. You are holy, holy, Lord of heaven and earth, Lord of heaven and earth. Early in the morning, I will celebrate the night. And when I stumble in the darkness, I will call your name by night. God of wonders beyond our galaxy, you are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty. You are holy, holy, Lord of heaven and earth, Lord of heaven and earth. And hallelujah to the Lord of heaven and earth. Hallelujah to the Lord of heaven and earth. Hallelujah to the Lord of heaven and earth. God of wonders beyond our galaxy, you are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty. You are holy. God of wonders beyond our galaxy, you are holy, holy. The universe declares your majesty. You are holy, soul, are you weary and troubled? No light in the darkness you see. There's light for a look at the Savior, and life more abundant and free. Through death into life everlasting, He passed and we followed Him there. For us sin no more hath dominion, for more than conquerors we are. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in His wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace. His word shall not fail you, He promised. Believe Him and all will be well. Then go to a world that is dying, His perfect salvation to tell. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in His wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace. In the light of His glory and grace. Lord, thank you so much just for this opportunity that we have to get together and just to worship you, Lord. I pray that this morning that you just be first and foremost glorified, Lord, and that we would just hear your word and let it pierce our hearts, Lord, and just to learn it and apply it to our lives. I pray this in your name. Amen.
Awake my soul and sing His praise aloud, sing His praise aloud.
Yeah, junior high, you're dismissed. Just embrace the awkward. It's all right.
There is a sound that changes things.
Let's let them transition out before we begin. I'm moving some things around.
Wake up
Woo.
You slumbering, it's time to worship Him. Wake my soul and sing.
This is great. Y'all excited to be here? They're excited. I'm excited. I've got some things to show y'all. Do y'all like free stuff? So me too. So I've got one thing, if you're at, Denton Bible Student Ministries, maybe this is you, maybe not. By the way, great job, high school choir, with everything you've done this morning, and we're so proud of you. Give them a hand for a second. That's great. Incredible. Really amazing. Oh, you're welcome. So if you're at Denton Bible Student Ministries long enough, you realize that maybe your closet is full of our T-shirts. I know we had one and a half years kind of pandemic where we didn't, give out as many. But that was my life. I grew up through this ministry, and T-shirts were a huge part of that. That was usually my wardrobe. And so you look at it and you're like, wow, I really do have a lot of Denton Bible Student Ministry T-shirts. And so I was collecting them kind of my whole life, slowly. And over time, and I'm just going to throw out some old ones. I mean, I know these aren't so great, and if this isn't your size, you can just pass it to a friend around you. Let's throw out maybe a few over here. But, we are ready for the back? Yeah. So back in again, I don't know the sizes of these. I know this one is a small, and it's a really, this is a Heroes 2019. This is a 2019 shirt. So I've got, all right, I can't pass that up. There you go. And so, there we go. How about a little behind the back action right there? Look at that. How about we punt it? How about we kick it? There we go. Wham! There we go. All right. So I'll be here all morning for the next 25 minutes. All right. So I'll get to that. And so, wow, I have some more. What do y'all want? How do y'all want me to throw it? What? Under the legs? And then I'm going to try under the legs? I don't know about this. I don't like it. There you go. I can do behind the back. We'll see. Behind the back, all the way back there. There we go. Oh, wow, that went straight there. And then to Blake in the back. Oh, no. Are we good? I don't even know if he needs that. Blake, did you going through high school, did you get a huge wardrobe of Denton Bible Student Ministry shirts? Anyone? All right, great. I'm excited for all of you. So what happened to me is I collected a lot. I pretty much did everything that you can do. I mean, every trip you could go on. Back then it was 7th and 8th graders in middle school, and we called it JV. I'm setting this up so I can show you something, not the chairs. So what happened was eventually you get a lot of T-shirts, and they're not meaningless, right? They have memories, but they get worn and tattered, right? You don't want to wear them all the time. They get old. So what do? Do you throw them out? I'm asking. What do y'all do? Oh, that was a good answer. Yeah, you donate it. That's a great answer. Why didn't I think of that? No, of course, yeah, we donate. Donate clothes is great. I've donated clothes before, but, so you have these old DBSM shirts. So my mom asked me for them 2 Christmases ago, and she took a bunch of, she's been wanting to do this for a long time. She took a bunch of ordinary things, which not that I don't love them anymore, but I'm like, I have no purpose, I have no use for them, and they take up a lot of space. And so she took a bunch of ordinary, I'll push this back so more people can see it. Pardon. Am I in England? All right, here we go. All right, and she made a quilt. All right, someone made a quilt, but she was over it, my mom. And so I have so many shirts. 2 Christmases ago, she said, all right, give me all the ones you have. And so I and there's a reason for the pattern here. So I'm trying to, that's not going to work. Y'all can sort of see. I did all this so y'all could see. This is a reveal. These are all my some of my favorite Denton Bible Student Ministry T-shirts. So I will take you through some of them. Oh, yeah, it didn't work. I should have just used 2 people. All right, so this is sort of working now, and I'll So I'll hold it up like this. All right, so up here we did kind of a sports world theme. I should jump on these chairs. We did sort of like a sports world theme. Can y'all see? I'll leave it up. I'm sorry. So this is this is 2005. Shout. Please tell me you were born in 2005. So walk in the light, gain. Laundry detergent was a theme here. Shout, gain. I don't know what we were designing. And then a lot of you probably entered here and here. This yellow shirt, any of y'all campers at that? Any of you campers at, I know a lot of you were at Upside Down. Yeah, wow, time flies. So I did that as a theme. And then aliens, so sports world. I had to include a little 2020 t-shirt, Romania. This was the first t-shirt I ever got, The Great Adventure. This was one of my favorites. Air it out. This is when we used to do a flag football tournament, a ski trip. And then Trinidad had our Trinidad mission trips in the middle there from 2015 through 2019. Pretty cool Fall Palooza shirt. The old school DBSM Connections t-shirt. I'm in the way, sorry. Thump Day. Thank you for the clap, by the way. Is that Chad? Peg Fest, Monday Night FCA and the Mill, and then a bunch of information overloads. My favorite shirt of all time when I was in junior high and high school was this one. This one was royalty. Everyone loved it. And so there you go. I'm going to leave this up so you can come and see them after or what have you. I'm sorry for the people over there. I had to make some decisions. So I can't believe that sort of worked. So on their own, by themselves, these are all very, very, very ordinary things. I just threw out some t-shirts, right? And we all have them, extra t-shirts. My mom took these ordinary things and made them into something extraordinary and actually an instant keepsake, On the other side, you can use these companies. It's like a blanket, so they do that. So there you go. And you need to have some spare change for sure. It's not a cheap task, but it's worth it. Sometimes we're tempted to zoom in on one, I'll call it scene, or one moment of your life. And instead of kind of zooming out to see the entire quilt, the entire sort of masterpiece that maybe God is weaving behind the scenes. But we're tempted to look at one scene, to one moment, to one conversation, to one circumstance, and maybe let that define us, or maybe let that dictate our view of God, or anything like that. When in reality, something like this might be being made and stitched quietly somewhere. God is working maybe backstage, behind the scenes. My mom took these away. I had no clue. So the ordinary became the extraordinary. For instance, pick a favorite movie right now in your head. Maybe, I won't give you one, but you can think of one. Maybe it's Lord of the Rings. If I were to ask you to take one scene from that movie and you have to use that to describe the whole franchise, that would be really hard to do. Well, actually, that may be a bad example, but still, one scene out of context it really doesn't paint the whole picture, does it? What if your scene was when Frodo and Sam separate for a little while? That doesn't really define the whole movie, but if you were just to zoom in on one thing, it looks pretty bad. Instead of zooming out to see the entire picture, to see the entire story from beginning to end. There's more to a movie than just one scene. There's more to life than just one circumstance or one conversation, one t-shirt. Maybe something bigger and something more meaningful is happening. And you're bringing in all sorts of stories this morning and all sorts of backgrounds and places where you're following Christ or not following Christ. We're all at different kind of levels in that journey. I don't know. I don't know where you're at spiritually. I don't know how you're doing, maybe even emotionally. But you're here this morning. And sometimes, maybe this is you, but sometimes we're tempted to think and look at our circumstances just like standalone t-shirts on their own. We're just tempted to see it for what it is and hold it in our hand and let that kind of define us. But that can lead to a lot of confusion and questions if we have this perspective, not zoomed out perspective. If we have a zoomed in only perspective of all these things happening in our life, that leads to questions like this, maybe for you. God, did you forget about me? I'm right here. This isn't cool. This is not going well right now. It may lead to a question like this: God, do you even care about me? Or an explanation or explanation after you, like, God, this really hurts right now. This isn't fun. I have a lot of pain in my life, or I have things not really going like I want them to go. Where are you, God? You seem hidden. You seem definitely like you're in the background, because I definitely don't see you. Like, what is going on? These questions kind of boiling up inside of you. God, where are you? When times where your life doesn't look like a beautiful quilt like this, but a series of worn and tattered old t-shirts. And sometimes I've had to use these words to describe a circumstance I'm in. Man, this just feels like just this rotten mess. How about this rotten, random mess? God, this doesn't make sense. It feels like a rotten and random mess in my life, and what do I do with that? There's a t-shirt here, a t-shirt there. Here's the statement, and here's the hope for these next few weeks as we begin a new journey. Not only can these individual pieces in your life, not only can they be sewn into something beautiful, but God is the one making that happen. God is the one sewing those things together in His perfect time, quietly at times, but He's there, and He's constant, and He's working something that looks like chaos, but when you zoom out, you're like, oh, that's beautiful, and that's a keepsake now. That's really cool. I didn't see it like that because I was so zoomed in. And that is exactly where we find a young, orphaned girl in our Old Testament, in one of the few just narrative dramas in the Bible, and one of the most fascinating books in the Bible. They even, like, people that don't believe in God still take it as, this is a really beautiful story. She's living in exile in a foreign land. She's keeping her Jewish heritage hidden. The story of Esther weaves this underlining story of God's sovereignty throughout any situation. Even when things seem hopeless, we're going to see that there's this underlining thread woven throughout this incredible story through this young girl living in Persia. And the unique thing about this book, as y'all probably know, is that God is never mentioned. So for the next few weeks, we're going to be in the Bible. You're not going to see that word. You're not going to actually read anything about God. But we're going to see Him more active than ever. I would argue than ever. He's not mentioned, but we're going to see His presence in a different way. And He is sewing together something so beautiful in the background. You just got to trust it. And so we're going to be looking at, even starting today, you're going to be reading some things in the story, thinking about her in that situation and all these things, and it's going to seem just like madness, like, what is going on? This is crazy. This should be a movie. And yes, it should. But just trust the sovereign God. He may be hidden, He may be silent, but in many ways, He's really not silent, and He's really not hidden. And there's a time in history where God seemed distant because Israel is in a foreign land, but He's just waiting to actually deliver them. He's not distant. He's so near, and He's waiting to deliver His people. He's in control of everything in the story of Esther. You're going to love me for this. We're not actually, I know we could spend a long time just trying to catch up for where we've been, but just in like 2 sentences, we've been on a journey, right? And so that's all intentional to get us to this point as well in Esther. And so we've been exiled. And I don't know how you feel about that, but we have been. We've been in Daniel, right? We've been in Daniel. There's only 2 books of the Bible that talk about Israel in exile in Babylon, and that's Ezekiel and Daniel. We went through Daniel, very righteous man, young man, very righteous old man. Nothing really seemed, there was nothing written wrong about him. He was in Babylon for over 70 years. He stayed faithful to God. Some of you are named Daniel for him, and that's why. Then King Cyrus allowed Jews to return. Zerubbabel took the first return back, and we read about that last week in Ezra, if you were here. Just 1 week in Ezra. Wish it could have been more, but sorry. But there we go. Now you can read it. But not every Jew left Persia. Remember, now Persia controls everything in the empire. And yeah, some Jews are returning back to the promised land. They're rebuilding the temple. Oh, Nehemiah is going to be coming in a little bit. That's all fine and good. But what about the people that stayed in the exile land, just lived there? Because it's a great place to live. That's where we find Esther in this series. And I am just ecstatic to be here with you all and to be able to, we've been wanting to teach this. I've personally been wanting to teach and walk through this with y'all a long time. It's got so much for us. Real quick, if you turn to the slide, there's a page here, and the summary page. You actually can take a picture on your phone if you want. We'll just go through it really quickly. The first one, just kind of the facts about Esther. So the author of Esther, we think it's either, I know this seems kind of boring, but this will help you really appreciate what you're about to see in chapters 1 and 2 this morning. So just very quickly, scan this. If you need to jump ahead while I'm talking, that's okay. Just get this, because this is giving you your foundation for the book. We don't really know who wrote it, so way to start. Maybe Ezra, Nehemiah, or maybe Mordecai. I don't know. I wasn't there. Audience, to all Jews, that, hey, God is still present and cares, even though you're in exile. All right? Believe it. Time span, that's actually really important. This is a 10-year book in Esther's life, okay? It's around, we actually know exactly when it was, 483 through 473 BC. They may not mean much to you, and that's okay. All you need to know is that it's right between Ezra chapter 6 and 7. You can call Esther Ezra 6.5. There you go. Right in the between. There you go. I can't say that 3 times fast. Theme. This is important, all right, y'all? Our theme for, I can't see y'all over there, I'm sorry. I'm like, hello, like a puppet show. Our theme is God is silently using the ordinary for the extraordinary, as we've already seen the quilt. God is going to use the ordinary Esther to do something extraordinary through God's people. Yes, he is. Key verse 4:14, for such a time as this. Come back next week. Something unique God has never mentioned. Characters. All right, this is important. We're in a story, and this morning I'm not actually going to have the text on the screen at all, and we're going through 2 chapters, so I'm just showing you some highlights along the way, and we're telling a story this morning. So if you're a film fan, if you like a good narrative drama, like if you like dramas, this is for you for sure. This is actually very important how I wrote it out. I'm going to slowly move this back so I can see some people over here while I talk. We're going to introduce some characters to our story today. All right? This is King Ahasuerus. And I'm not going to stand up here this morning, and every time I say king, I'm not going to say his name just because it'll just save a word, and it's over time. We're going to say his name a lot. So if I say king of Persia, that's who I'm talking about. All right? King Ahasuerus. Then we have Queen Esther. So let's repeat this together, because everything I have in front of the name is going to help us identify with the character. So King Ahasuerus, you repeat. That's we're getting along great. Queen Esther. Yeah, she's royalty. Cousin Mordecai. It's your cousin, we'll see. Wicked Haman. This isn't VeggieTales. And faithful God. Thank you for everyone. Yeah. So these are our characters. If you're like in this, a lot of you do plays and things. This is the cast list, right? So this is, I call him Wicked Haman for a reason. Bro's wicked, all right? There's no other way to say it. He's got a lot of hatred in his heart. I'm sorry. Faithful God. So we're going to see a few of these characters today. Are y'all ready to Queen Ezra? Esther. Ezra was last week, Keats. Let's get to Esther, all right? Today, throughout the book, the next slide, the way we're going to break down Esther, is in 4 scenes throughout 4 weeks. I wish it was longer. 4 scenes. The first 2 scenes up here, it's about the danger and threat of the Jews. This morning, we're going to be in scene 1 of like this film. You can think of it as scenes. Esther's crowned queen. Go Esther, all right, in chapters 1 and 2. Next week, we're going to look at Haman's evil plot and how he wants to destroy, I'm giving away the end, but he wants to destroy all the Jewish people. This is literally what he wants to do. He's full of hatred and wickedness. But guess what? In chapters 5 through 10, we see the deliverance and triumph of the Jews. It's okay. The last 2 scenes, we're going to see God's deliverance, and he's going to use Esther. We're going to see Israel's celebration in the last few chapters. I'm excited. Today we're going to be in 2 chapters. Don't worry. I still encourage you to open up and to follow along, because I'm going to give you key verses to maybe highlight the ones I have highlighted and why they're important. So one day when you're teaching this, you can kind of have a framework of what's happening in the story. But we begin in chapter 1 with King, remember, Ahasuerus. Watch this. We get kind of a setting. In verses 1 through 9, we sort of get this setting, and the king's going to throw this huge party. Watch this in 1 and 2. Now, in the days of King Ahasuerus, this king reigned from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces. In those days, when the king sat on his royal throne in Susa, the citadel, and stop right there, King Ahasuerus right now rules all of Persia. I don't know if you really, if history is your favorite class, maybe you've thought of this, and this would be crazy if you did. But if you're thinking, wait, isn't he really called Xerxes? Well, that's his Greek name. There's been a lot of mix-up about this, and people have discredited Esther from being in the Bible because they think, oh, this isn't the right king. Well, he had 2 names. That's what most historians believe. That's what we'll say, and we believe. Susa is the capital in Persia. So they're in one of the capitals of Persia. There's a lot of Persia, all right? So this is one of the main capitals. The king was there, and he has this high palace. If you go to Athens, you can see the Acropolis, and that's the Acropole. That's like the high point for the king and queens and royalty. They had this too in Persia. So they're sitting high and lifted up. And if you're just a king in Persia, what do you think you want to do with your free time? Throw a party, exactly. So in verses 3 and 4, they hold a feast for all the officials, all the king's officials. He gathers them all together. The army of Persia and Media and the nobles, the governors, the provinces before him. Verse 4, while he showed the riches of his royal glory and splendor for all of his greatness for many days. It says for actually 180 days. Why did he throw this grand party? What are we learning about this king so far? That's not really reading between the lines. To show the riches of his royal glory. He's kind of boasting in his riches and his wealth. If you want to put that first one up, the king is just kind of showing off his wealth in this grand banquet. The king's wealth is on full display in Esther. Learning a lot about our character so far, and honestly, a lot of people don't think it really means 180 days. Maybe that was an exaggeration, but they do believe it was a long feast. And how long? Well, in verse 5 it says, and when these days were completed, the king gave for all the people present Susa, great and small, a feast lasting 7 days. And then it goes on to, if you read for yourself, it goes on to just bring so much detail into this party. I mean, there's no limits to this. So we're going to say this was like a 7-day feast. And they're all just kind of talking about how rich they are and how great the king is. And the king's just kind of, honestly, drunk the entire time. They were drinking so much. And they were just living, this was what the king did. And he just gathered his officials in there, and it was all about pleasure. All about pleasure. All about earthly pleasure. Lavishly described. And y'all, that's really, chapter 1, it gives a long list of descriptive words and talking about this king's party, and that's rare for the Old Testament to give this much detail to something like that. If you were wondering, the Persian colors, like you have school colors, they're Persian colors. I'm trying to get you to paint this picture. Was white and blue, or like a white and bluish purple, because purple is really hard to find, and so if you had it, you're like, whoa. That's why purple is like royalty usually. And so when I see Esther, I think in like purple. And so if you want to take notes in purple too, that's great. If you own a purple pen, there you go. Probably not 180 days. And this is what it was about. Verse 8. And drinking was according to this edict. There is no compulsion. What does that mean? This party, you can do whatever you want. Usually back in the day, if the king raised his glass, everyone would have to take a sip. And so the king says, I don't want you to have to worry. You can drink whenever you want. I want you relaxed. I want you to be fully, to rest. Enjoy yourself. In another life, maybe he could be like a event coordinator planner. I mean, this king throws a good party. And I'm not calling it a good party. I'm just saying he was trying to entertain his guest by any means necessary, and that's bad. And what happens? The queen in verse 9, his queen, where is she? She's not there. His wife, his main wife, Queen Vashti, holds a similar feast for women. And this is actually important. I didn't want to go, verse 9 is like a seesaw, like a pivot. Esther, the book of Esther, is going to constantly have this great contrast of how men in royalty were kind of had this exaggeration of their power and they're so high and mighty. And it contrasts severely to how they treated women as these kind of fragile beings and honestly just as objects. And you're going to see that painted through here, unfortunately, throughout Esther. I just wanted to point that out. That's like a sermon in a sermon. You can look for that as a theme in, it's another thread. It's another thread of how the author, whoever wrote this, wanted to be apparent. Because look at this. The queen's not even in this feast. This amazing party, she's having to throw a different party just for her and the girls. And her girls. There's a better name for that, I don't know. But her girls. The power of the king versus the fragile status of women at this time in Persia. And watch this. The king's wealth displayed in 10 through 12. This is the main kind of reason for how we meet young Esther, so it's kind of important. On the seventh day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, so you're in high school, he was drunk, wasn't thinking straight. He summoned and asked, or ordered, that his wife, the queen, to come in, and because she was, watch this, in verse 11, to bring the queen in before the king with her royal crown in order to show the peoples and the princess her beauty. She was very beautiful. He just kind of wanted to, again, power. I have everything, you have nothing. I have the most pretty wife. I want to kind of show her off to all these guys. He orders the queen to come and do that. A drunken king summons or demands wife to show off her beauty to his guest. She was lovely. And watch this, 12, she refused. I have a little triangle above verse 12 because it's a huge pivot. The queen refused to come to the king's command. And this really upset the king. Really, really, really upset the king. And so we have his wealth displayed, and his wishes actually are denied here. And watch what happens with the king and his wife that leads us to Esther later. The king's counselors express concern in verses 13 through 18. Verse 17, for the queen's behavior will be made known to all women, causing them to look at their husbands with contempt, since they will say, oh, look what happened between the king and queen. And if she's going to treat you like that, then maybe all women in Persia will do the same thing to their husbands. So the king had horrible advice from his officials. And they said, because of her disobedience, when she didn't come when you summoned her, a lot of other women could follow suit. And so we can't let that happen. And so they advised him to set a decree out, basically divorcing it. The only word for it is a sort of way he could divorce his wife and to look for a new queen. And the king loved this idea, I mean, he listened, and I don't know if anyone else had another idea, but this is what he wanted to do. In verse 17, the queen is to never, or the end of 19, watch this. The queen is to never again come before the king, and let the king give her royal permission to another who is better than she. They advised she be replaced, and he agreed, and the decree went out to everyone, sent throughout the land. Verse 20, the Persians had a great, this is sort of strange, the Persians had a great postal service, so this actually would be very easy for them. They could just get out word in a lot of different languages and dialects, and so many people would hear about this. And so the king kind of said, I'm doing this, I'm in the hunt for this new kind of wife for me, the new queen. It's over with her, and it's sort of like a divorce. Like, think of someone in politics that's really powerful. If they were going through a divorce, a lot of people would find out about it. It'd be a very public thing. So this is what the king was doing. His wealth was displayed. His wishes were denied by his wife. She said, I'm not going to do that. And so his wife and him divorced. And that's what chapter 1's all about. Chapter 1 is setting us up for Esther. It gives us the need for the book. Otherwise, Esther, as you'll see, there's really no need for what you're about to read. In chapter 2, we're going to see the king's going to throw a beauty pageant. He threw a grand banquet in chapter 1. He's going to throw a beauty pageant in chapter 2. And this is where we finally meet. Finally, like Keats, I just want to meet Mordecai and Esther. I've got VeggieTales on the mind. All right, if you're good, maybe we can watch some of VeggieTales next week. Is that okay? Did y'all like that? All right. Y'all got to sing along, though. I'm not singing alone. I'm not singing at all. Thank you. So, and Esther is found. Okay, we're going to see Esther is found in verses 1 through 7. Some of the verses on there, I'm sorry, may be off. But in 1 through 7, we're going to read, there's a search for the new queen in verses 1 through 4, and we're finally going to find Esther in verse 5. But first off, watch this in verse 4. And let the young women who plead, they're looking for this new queen, and the king's friends come to him and say this, and let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of your old queen, Vashti. And this pleased the king, and so he did so. So their idea is, how do we find the appropriate new person, the new wife, the new queen? I got it. Let's throw a beauty pageant. Again, their ideal, the way they would view women here in their culture, it's kind of the authors, one, exaggerating some things for effect, but this is the way the Persians think. They're like, okay, the only thing that matters is just how beautiful this girl is. So we're just going to look for beauty. Literally nothing underneath, no heart. They're not looking at anything else. They're saying, let's just find the most pretty girl to be the queen. That is their mission. That's their culture. So they would have 1 year where they would have to go under these rituals and beauty treatment, all these things, and then they would be presented to the king. In verse 5, let's meet some new characters. Now there was a Jew in Susa, the citadel, whose name was Mordecai. And he was a Benjamite who had been carried away, verse 6, from Jerusalem among the captives, carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried them away. Enter Mordecai, a Jew living in the capital as well. He's a Benjamite, and he wasn't literally carried away in the exile because he would be way too old for this, but he was an exiled Jew, just like Daniel. He's just a little bit, he's a lot younger than Daniel, but he's like Daniel 2.0. There you go. He's the next Daniel. And he's still living in Persia. Verse 7. He was bringing up Hadassah, that is Esther, the daughter of his uncle, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman had a beautiful figure and was lovely to look at. And when her father and her mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. Esther was brought up by her cousin Mordecai when her mother and father had passed away. I have some information about her name. Hadassah means myrtle, and myrtle is this, it means love and fidelity. It's the Hebrew name for her, and they have to do with flowers. And so you can look that up later. There's like this flower in ancient Middle East where she was named after. That was her Hebrew name. Esther is her new Persian name. Does anyone know what Esther means? Esther means star. All right, so her Hebrew name, myrtle, means just love, even like courage to that and beauty. And her Persian name is Star, and it was actually named after a false god, a god that they worshipped in Persia. But that's Esther, a young orphan. She's beautiful and lovely. It kept repeating these words about her appearance, just like we have words that kind of just do that in one word. So instead of saying, maybe sometimes you would say very beautiful, we would just say gorgeous, right? In fact, the way the Hebrew writer wrote, he was saying, no, I just want you to know this girl was gorgeous. She was beautiful. They kept repeating it. And Mordecai, I love this, cousin Mordecai adopted her as just his own daughter. And they're just there in Persia. They're both Jews in a foreign land. And in verse 8, Esther is found. So when, verse 8, the king's order and his edict were proclaimed, and many young women were gathered, Esther also was taken into the king's palace and put in custody of someone who was in charge of the women. Verse 8. So in verses 1 through 8, Esther is found. She is now one of the women that will be competing for this beauty pageant. Now, we don't know if she was forced to go there or she went willingly. We're not really sure, but she's there. God is moving Esther in the right place, working behind the scenes. Just like in Genesis 12, he called Abram, soon to be Abraham, out of a land. He called a Saul, who became a Paul. Saul was murdering Christians. He says, we're done with that. You're going to be an instrument for good things now, and now you're going to be Paul, and you're going to make Christians, you're going to make churches. You're not going to kill them anymore. Now, this is Esther's moment. This is Esther's moment. And she's found. Watch what happens. She's not only found, but in verses 9 through 14, she's also favored. And the young woman pleased him and won his favor. And he quickly provided her with the cosmetics and her portion of food and with 7 chosen young women for the king's palace and advanced her and young women to the best place in the harem. Esther was immediately just found favor with the king and pretty much with everyone she met, by the way. They gathered together and she won his favor. She was given the best food. She was given 7 assistants just to continually kind of be around her to help her anything she needed. And she was given the best room in the places where all of his concubines were, all of the women that he gathered, the king gathered for himself. She lived with all of them. They all lived together. She lived there, and she was given the best place to live in that. So it must have been extraordinary. The riches and wealth where she was living now. Young Esther. The one, I love the word favor. It's going to talk about that later, and that's actually one of the main themes in scene 1 we're looking at today. I want you to know this. Esther, in the eyes of others, won their favor every time. She was winning favor with everyone she met. This is our Esther. And the word favor, actually, a lot of people think this is how the Hebrew author wanted to secretly put God in the story. The word favor would be associated with the word called hesed, which meant loyal love, and it had everything to do with just God the Father. And so in a way, whenever it talks about Esther having favor of others, it's sort of like saying, well, God is with Esther. She has this loyal love. She has this love for God, and she has this love for others. Everyone loves Esther. Not only was she beautiful, the author is more concerned with everyone loved her. Like, she was just an amazing young woman. Wow. Won his favor. And verse 10, you can read, no one knew she was a Jew. She continually, y'all know this, y'all have heard this story. She hid the fact that she was a Jew. Why? Because her cousin Mordecai told her to, for her safety. He said, keep your Jewish heritage hidden. while you're there. I don't know what they would do to you. She kept it hidden. But look who is still watching after her in verse 11. I love this. And every day, Mordecai walked in front of the court of the harem. That's where all the king's women lived, to learn how Esther was and what was happening to her. Amazing. Cousin Mordecai looking out for Esther. And he'll continually do that. He's an instrument. It's also, this is like a God character, sort of like God is using Mordecai to help Esther in this story, and especially next week and the week after. And these women would spend 12 months under this beautifying, basically. They would literally, it wasn't, remember I was saying in Persian culture, it wasn't about their heart. They just wanted these girls to look as pretty as possible. So they'd spend a whole year in all these rituals, and they'd make these women very beautiful. They were pampered. They had everything they needed. Every cosmetic, everything back then you would need for their status to look pretty. These hundreds, but now only a few women were given. And what would happen is, in verses 13 and 14, each woman would basically have one night with the king. And then if he was so pleased and he wanted to pick that girl, he would. And then it was then the girl would go back to the harem with the other girls and stay there maybe the rest of her life if she's not picked. Maybe the rest of her life, and just be there. This abuse of power from the king is evident and clear. You know, sometimes we read things like this, and I just want to remind you, there's a lot written in the Bible that sometimes we don't really understand. And I just want to remind you that from Genesis 3 on, it's all tainted with sin. And you're going to read a lot about the sin of humanity. And it doesn't mean God is making that happen. No. He's allowing it to happen for his greater purpose. We're zooming in on a t-shirt here. We've got to remember the entire, what's happening behind the scenes. We've constantly got to be thinking what is happening behind the scenes. But let's get to the last part. I want to Queen Esther this morning before we leave. Y'all? Yes, you said. In verses 15 through 18, watch what happens. When the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abigail, the uncle of Mordecai, so her cousin Mordecai, who had taken her, she asked for nothing except the king's, told the eunuch, she took nothing into the king. Now Esther was winning favor in the eyes of all who saw her. And when Esther was taken to the king into his royal palace in the 10th month, in the 7th year of his reign, the king loved Esther more than all the women and won grace and favor in his sight more than all of the others, so that he set the royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of his old queen, Vashti. And then the king made this great feast for everyone and called it Esther's feast. He also granted remission of taxes to the provinces and gave gifts with royal generosity. It's Esther's turn to see the king in verse 15. She goes in, she doesn't take anything with her, and it's actually, a lot of people believe that she actually said no to any extra makeup, anything. She went in just as she was. Nothing extra, no cosmetics, nothing. Just Esther. And it says she was winning favor in the eyes of all who saw her, the providence of God. And so around December, in the 7th year of this king, Esther is made the new queen of Persia. She wins. She's first. Esther is first. She got first place. She won. Meet our new queen, Esther. And she would be given this, her crown would be this purple ribbon with this white streak through it, and it would just be tied around her head, like this ribbon just be tied around her forehead. This is our new Queen Esther. Continually hiding her Jewish identity still, married to the Persian king. And now she's in a place of great influence. God has, just like a Joseph started in a pit, and now he's second command to the Pharaoh, Esther is now married to the king of Persia. Can you believe this? and they celebrated Esther with a feast. This all happened around 4 years after the divorce. This has taken 4 years to find the new queen, and now it's Esther, and God has brought her there. There's another quick story we can't go into, but this is really important. We'll get to next week. Mordecai actually is providential. He got a high position. Esther says, hey, I'm queen. All right, Mordecai, you're now at the king's gates. All right, you're with us now. And Mordecai overhears this plan to kill the king, and he saves the king. It's really, really cool stuff. And so that's going to come back later, but Mordecai, in the very end, saves the king just by overhearing something and bringing it to Esther's attention. And we're going to get back to that. But in closing for us, this scene, this amazing scene, Esther is brought up by her cousin Mordecai, this young orphaned girl, this ordinary, seemingly ordinary girl, God is going to use to do extraordinary things. Extraordinary. And that's what God does. He uses the ordinary, just the faithful, to bring about his greater purpose. There's two things every week I want to leave you with. The application. Every week I want to have eyes, I want to look through the eyes of God and through the eyes of Esther to give us two kind of points to go here. So the application slide in the very end, if you look at it, the first word I have for God is background. When I think of the first scene we just had here, I think of God, I think of the background because he is in the background of this book. He's not clearly seen. But what does that mean for us? It means God is constantly, yet silently, working in your life, stitching together those seemingly random pieces to make about and bring about something beautiful like this, steering and directing your life. And are you willing to trust that sovereign God like Esther did? Are you willing to take those steps of faith, to trust him, even like this blind faith? Are you willing to do that? I think of David in Psalm 13. He says, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? There's times in our life that feel like that. Can we have this Esther moment? Can we think about what Esther would have done? Remember the background. God's in the background. Just because he's hidden doesn't mean he's not working. He is. He's going to bring about something for his glory. We have no clue what he's working on backstage. You have no clue. The seemingly random circumstance in your life right now, you have no clue how God could use it for his good. It might look worn and tattered, but he's sewing it into a masterpiece. The other word for Esther, and this is the last one, winning favor. That's constantly in my mind. Esther was constantly winning favor with everyone. It wasn't just about her looks, even though the Bible says she's a beautiful young woman. But there was this other beauty to Esther that's going to be clearly seen throughout the story as well. She loved God. She had this love for God and this love for people. People were just drawn to her. No matter what religion whatever God they were serving back then, the Persians, everyone seemed to love Esther, loved being around her. She was always just doing the next thing, trusting the Lord. Are you living in a way where your life is just so attractive to other people, where they love being around you just because of your joy, your love for God, your faith, how you treat them, how they can feel comfortable around you? Apparently Esther had it, and it's something I want with my friends and non-Christian friends. I want with everyone. You know, we're going to be using before I pray, throughout this series, keep dropping pins. Throughout this series, I'm going to refer to something called an Esther moment, all right? So I'm going to the main theme of our book is Esther 4:14, right? We looked at that. And who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Next week, we're going to see that this all happened for a reason. That God's been making this little quilt the whole time. That for such a reason as this, Esther is brought into this kingdom to make this huge impact. And so when I refer to an Esther moment, it's times in life where you may say, well, maybe I'm in this circumstance for such a time as this. Maybe I'm in this blank, whatever it is, for such a time as this. And that's going to be a challenge the next 3 weeks as we look at this book. An Esther moment. Pray with me. Father, we, sometimes in the grand scheme of things, we don't always know why things happen. And it's hard to trust you every day, and especially when things are difficult in our lives. But we're just so encouraged by the story of Esther, and we're encouraged to have faith like her. We want to zoom out. We want to remember that you are working in the background, that we can trust you. Just because you're silent doesn't mean you're absent from our life. I don't know what everyone in this room is going through, but there's something on their mind and heart this morning. I pray that you would just, Father, you would comfort them. You would bring peace to these teenagers' lives. You would remind them about having these Esther moments. We would just say that verse. Maybe it's for such a time as this. Maybe God's using all this for this. And maybe I just need to trust him, and the pain's still there, but I can just trust him and maybe zoom out of this one ordinary thing, because he's going to bring about this other extraordinary thing. Thank you for these teenagers. Bless their week, and we're excited to come back to Esther next week and serve you all the more. We pray this in your son's name, Jesus. Everyone said, amen. You're dismissed. We don't have Elevate this week. That's okay. We'll be back next week. It's going to be great. Thanks for joining us.
There's no prison wall you can't break through, no mountain you can't move. All things are possible. And there's no broken body you can't raise, no soul that you can't save. All things are possible. The darkest night, you can light it up, you can light it up. Oh God of revival, let hope arise. Death is overcome, you've already won. Oh God of revival, you rose in victory, and now you're seated forever on the throne. So why should my heart fear what you've defeated? I will trust in you alone, 'cause there's no prison wall you can't break through, no mountain you can't move. All things are possible. And there's no broken body you can't raise, no soul that you can't save. All things are possible. The darkest night, you can light it up, you can light it up. Oh God of revival, let hope arise. Death is overcome, you've already won. Oh God of revival, oh God of revival. Come awaken your people, come awaken this city. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. Every stronghold will crumble, hear the chains hit the ground. Oh God of revival, pour it out, pour it out. Come awaken your people, to crumble. I hear the chains hit the ground. Who got a revival, pour it out. I've got a friend. He's closer than a brother. There is no judgment. Oh, how he loves me. I've got a friend, and he is my strength. He is my portion. With me in the valley, with me in the fire, with me in the storm. Let all my life testify, hallelujah. We are not alone, 'cause God really loves us. God really loves us. Hallelujah. Oh, praise my soul. God really loves us. God really loves us. His mercy's enough. His grace is sufficient. So come if you're needing forgiveness or healing. His mercy's enough. Oh, and this is our hope. The cross it is spoken. Death is no more. Christ is the Lord, and this is our hope. Hallelujah. We are not alone. Oh, God really loves us. Yes, God really loves us. Hallelujah. Oh, praise my soul. God really loves us. God really loves us. So we sing, oh, we are loved children. We're the sons and daughters. So what a father, what a father, what a friend, what a savior he is. It's Jesus. What a father, what a friend, what a savior. Who are we that you are mindful of us? What a father, what a friend, what a savior he is. What a father, what a friend, what a savior he is. Hallelujah. We are not alone, 'cause God really loves us. Sing it out. Oh, hallelujah. Oh, praise my soul. God really loves us. He does. God really loves us. What a father. What a father. What a friend. What a savior he is. What a father. What a friend. What a savior he is. What a father. What a friend. What a savior he is. 'cause you can mend any broken heart. I call you faithful Father. You finish everything you start. My soul was made. This is your part to respond. So tell 'em now. Yeah, I know you by